Okay, students, now we will do the part 3. All that day. Now, what did the Trojans do? All that day, the Trojans feasted and drank and celebrated. They feasted. Feasted means ate nicely. They drank all intoxicating drinks and all. Yes, and they feasted. They enjoyed. It was like a great celebration for them and celebrated. After all their celebrations, now they enjoyed so much the full day. They went to sleep and slept soundly. Okay, they went to sleep and they slept so soundly, so nicely. They did not care one bit. They thought, come on, the Greeks have gone, the enemies are gone. Now we will relax. But that day of rejoicing was soon followed by a night of terror and death. But that day was not at all a day of celebration for them. It resulted in what? In terror, fright, and death. Why? Because the Greek ships had not sailed far. I told you, no? The Greeks, they sailed their ships, but they had not gone very, very far. As soon as they were hidden by an island, they just went little bit far. They were hidden by an island. They had lowered their sails and dropped anchor. Yes, they had lowered their sails and they had dropped anchor and waited for the night. They waited for the night. Now, full day, what the Trojans were doing? Eating, drinking, enjoying, and naturally, night, what will happen? They will feel sleepy. They would feel sleepy. Yes, for the night. In the darkness, the fleet sailed back. Fleet means the full, all the ships together. Yes, it's a collective noun for ships. All the ships came back together and they sailed back. And the leading ship, leading means the ship that was right in the front, which was Agamemnon's, bore the red light high on its mast. Now, what is the mast? The middle pole of the ship, the tallest pole of the ship. So, on that was a red light. Okay, a red light, a lamp. The Greek who was watching for the return of the fleet crept to the wooden horse and gave the signal. Now, the Greek, I told you, no, the one who they had tied and taken as the thing. First, he showed that, oh, he's very frightened of the Greeks and all that. But actually, he was kept to give the signal. Soon as he saw the ships coming, yes, what did he do? He went near the gate, the entrance of the big horse, and he gave it the signal. He knocked on it. Maybe they might have told him, come on, you knock in 2 times, 3 times. It was a signal for them. Okay, the side of the horse opened, and the side of the horse opened. The Greeks climbed out and opened the gates. Now, the Greeks who were inside the horse, they came out of the horse and they opened the gates. The whole Greek army entered the sleeping city because the Trojans had ate, drank, and had gone to sleep, and the Greeks entered the sleeping city. Immediately, the Greeks set fire to houses and towers and palaces. Now, what did they start doing? They started burning and killing. So, as soon as they came into the Trojan city, the Troy, they entered, they started burning. They burned houses, towers, palaces, and began to burn and kill. Yes, so they started burning and killing and destroying everything that came in their way. Troy was filled with the sight of leaping flames. Leaping flames means fire. Yes, high, the fire was rising. And the sound and shouting and noise of weapons and the cries of weeping women. Yes, women were crying, shouting, yes, weeping. and the full city of Troy was burning because the Greeks were burning and killing. The sleeping Trojans sprang out of their beds, but they were taken by surprise. Of course, the Trojans also, they were brave. Yes, they were brave. That is why the Greeks had to take over their city by a trick. But they were taken up by surprise, entirely surprising, because the Greeks came in by a trick. Their enemies were right inside their walls, and many of the Trojans were killed before they could put on their armor and seize their weapon. So before they could put on their armors, you know what are armors? Yes, they all that iron uh, cover when they go for a battle, and even before they could take their weapons. A bright light lit the night sky as palaces, houses, temples, and towers went up in flames. And the Greeks did not spare, did not leave even the temples. They started burning everything. The Trojans fought as well as they could. The Trojans also, they fought as well as they could. But it was all in vain. It was all useless. Old King Priam was killed with all his brave sons. Now, old King Priam, he was a very brave king, but he also was killed with all his brave sons. Hector's wife and his old mother and sister were carried off as slaves by the conquerors. You know, in those days, when the enemies is to take over the city, the women were taken as slaves. Sometimes they used to take the men also as slaves. So, old Hector's wife and his old mother and sister were taken as slaves. Yes, they were taken by the enemies. Their fate, in contrast to Helen's, when King Menelaus rushed to the city looking for her and found her in a palace. And they carried off. But their fate was in contrast of Helen's. Helen's fate means luck was different. The Hector's wife, mother, sister's fate, yes, was entirely opposite of Helen. Helen was taken back by King Menelaus in a nice way. He forgave her. But Hector's wife and mother and sister were taken as slaves. She hung her head in shame when her husband came in front of her. What did she do? She put her head down. She bowed her head in shame. She felt ashamed of herself and sorrow as she faced her former husband, as she came face to face with her husband. Her voice was choked with emotion and she felt like crying. Her voice was choked. You know what is choked? Entirely crying voice she felt. And she could not speak. But Menelaus forgave her. Menelaus ने उसको माफ किया. He forgave her. And she went back with him. She went back with him. Yes. For it was only Aphrodite who had turned her heart away from her home and her husband and her child. Now, you know, Aphrodite means a wicked fairy who had put a magic upon Helen, and because of her, because of this wicked fairy, yes, the Helen's mind and all was diverted from her husband, from her child, from her home, and that is why King Menelaus forgave Helen. When morning came, nothing was left of the proud, rich city that had resisted attack for 10 years. And when morning came, nothing was left of the proud, rich city. Which proud, rich city? The city of Troy. Nothing was left because all the warriors, the brave warriors were killed. Yes, the women were taken as slaves by the conquerors, and the palaces, towers, all the big houses, all were burnt. Yes, everything was destroyed, and this city which had resisted attack, resisted means kept off attack for 10 long years, was now defeated. Okay, now in next lecture we will do with the exercises and some of the workshops. Okay.